The Project 2025 plan is not a game. Look it up.
You might have seen this new push this week to raise awareness of something called Project 2025. Now, this is not the official agenda of the Trump campaign. This is not the official agenda of the Trump campaign.
Can I finish, Simone? Will you just shut up for a minute and let me finish?
Pardon me, sir. You don't get to tell me to shut up on national television.
And we don't tell people to shut up on this show.
Oh, here we go. We have a new boogeyman on the scene. It's Project 2025 with Joe Biden deteriorating right in front of us. They have to have a new boogeyman that they can point to and say, no, that's the real threat. And it's Project 2025, a plan put together by the Heritage Foundation. It's not part of the Trump campaign. Trump has denounced parts of it, as has Marco Rubio and a bunch of other people as well, but they don't care. This is what they're going to try to scare Americans with. It will work on some of them because Americans are generally stupid, including the ones that still believe anything this mainstream media says.
We view these threats as very deep in terms of the right-wing networks that are out there. You have the head of the Heritage Foundation or a representative from their foundation on a television, I think yesterday, saying that they are calling for a second American revolution, and he cannot promise that it will not be bloodless. This is what's happening on the eve of the 4th of July in America today. And so we do believe the threats are extreme, and the American people feel that, and we'll be focusing on mobilizing folks around those issues, and also making sure that people understand that there are tools. Our Constitution provides tools in this time of crisis for the American people to protect and advance democracy.
I had a conversation with a guy the other day on the street, actually, who said, I've been checked out of politics for 4 or 5 years. What's been going on? Which is a great question. I was like, where do I start? And also said, his only question, Stuart, his only question was, what's this Project 2025 I keep hearing about? Which suggests to me that it has, to Amanda's point, it has taken on a kind of virality out past the sort of circle of people that are avid news consumers.
Absolutely. Project 2025 is a threat to American democracy, and I think that should be the top line here. But the other thing that I think is really important when you talk about Project 2025 is that Project 2025 is wildly unpopular. A lot of this stuff is not popular, and Joe was talking about this earlier. The problem Trump is having is not that he's not a charismatic guy. The problem that he's having is that the Republican Party's platform of what little is left is not popular, right? And I mean, what's interesting about 2025, and I've written about it, and I've read about it, and it really is really important. But there are things in it, like they want to regulate in vitro fertilization.
Right.
Think about that. IVF, wildly popular, scientific marvel, produced children for many, many, many people in this country. And they want to regulate it because they believe, and one of the central tenets of Project 2025 and the Heritage Foundation and this whole gestalt is that a fertilized egg is a human being.
At my show, we spend a lot of time talking about Project 2025. I was thrilled to see you are a founding member of the recently created Stop Project 2025 Congressional Task Force. I do have to ask you, what are the realistic actions that this task force can take in order to keep the most radical agenda in the history of the United States from becoming a reality?
Yes, I'm pleased to be a founding member of this Stop Project 2025 task force. Well, the first thing we have to do is ensure that Donald Trump is not a reelected president of the United States of America. It's been my experience with extreme MAGA Republicans that they don't make threats, they make promises. I think sunlight is the best disinfectant, and this new task force to stop Project 2025 will be doing exactly that. We will bring the sunlight, the awareness, and educate people about this extreme far-right manifesto that will ostensibly, undo and dismantle the federal government as we know it, including things like eliminating the Department of Education, mass firings of civil servants by reinstating an executive action Schedule F, so that they would just be hiring ostensibly partisan Trump sycophants, bans on books, bans on abortion, eliminating Title I funding for K through 12 schools. It's just, it's wild and frightening.
Let's talk about Project 2025. Democrats have been sounding the alarm about this document, more than 900 pages. What's What is it, and what are Democrats so riled up about?
I think critically, you should point out, this is not a campaign document. These are advisors, though, many of whom will probably be in a second Trump White House should he win in November. What it is it's on paper. And I think when you put 900 plus pages of conservative policies, and the vast majority of them are strong conservative policies that you and I would be very familiar with, but they're also very aggressive. And I think some of them would be considered radical, even by some Republicans, when you look at the immigration space, when you look at the federal agency space, when you look at what they would want to do with abortion and things like mifepristone. They spell them out in detail, written each chapter by somebody who either had a past high-level role in the administration or could likely have one in a second administration, laying out what they aspirationally would like to do. I think the reality is it actually tracks really closely with what we've seen from the Trump team, from the campaign on their own website. The president has been very upfront about his expansive policy goals for a second term. And it's also this. Project 2025 is not operating in isolation, nor are they operating in a vacuum. There is a constellation of outside groups, very well funded, former Trump administration officials that would likely be in a second term, that are doing similar things, just less publicly. Trump would enter the White House not only with those very loyal advisors, no John Kelly's, no General Mattis, but also with a policy team that is far more fleshed out than we ever saw in a first term.
Speaking of what a Donald Trump next White House would do, there is a conservative effort. It's called Project 2025, and it includes several former Trump administration officials. They are arguing, and they have in their platform, if you will, to purge thousands of civil servants from federal agencies, vastly expand the power of the presidency. And I want you to listen to what one of the leaders of Project 2025 said this week.
We are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
Are you comfortable with that?
Well, he's not running for president, is he? I mean, our candidate's Donald Trump. I didn't say Donald Trump say that. Donald Trump's running on common sense, on restoring common sense versus the lunacy of the last 4 years and the far left and the shadow government that now is running our country with Joe Biden as its figurehead. That's what he's running against. I mean, think tanks do think tank stuff. They come up with ideas. They say things. I like Heritage Foundation. I agree with some of the things they stand for, but there's a bunch of scholars and people that turn around and work on different projects. But our candidate for president is Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is running on restoring common sense, working class values, and making our decisions on the basis of that, not on ideological lunacy, which is what we've seen over the last 4 years under Joe Biden.
Is that what Project 2025 is? Is it ideological lunacy?
No, I think it's the work of a think tank, of a center-right think tank, and that's what think tanks do. I can assure you, I don't have them with me today, but I've seen plenty of write-ups, frankly, not just from left-wing think tanks, but from columnists and others who are opinion writers who have actually come up with crazy ideas that are now the policies of the United States under Joe Biden. Things like, I don't know, letting people into our country and releasing them because there's no danger. Now we see that there is danger. Things like attacking American energy. And as a result, now the cost of living for all Americans has gone up. Those are radical ideas that began in the faculty clubs and in the think tanks of the far left that are now the policy and the laws of the United States in 2024.
Yeah. Just for the record, the numbers at the border are the lowest now than since 2021. But I want to.
With all of the speculation about Joe Biden's future, it's important to remember what is at stake in this election, what this is all about, why we're even talking about this. I mean, this week, the Supreme Court just expanded the role of presidential immunity beyond what has ever been in the past, ever. And right now, Donald Trump and all of his acolytes are plotting to push through a radical expansion of executive power so they can do what they want to do without any consequences. And we know that because they wrote it all down. Of course they did. It's literally online. As we discussed many times on the show, the right-wing think tank, the Heritage Foundation, gathered hundreds of conservative organizations and laid out a roadmap for a second Trump term known as Project 2025. And I want you to listen to something the president of the Heritage Foundation said this week in response to that Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity that also happened. Here's Kevin Roberts.
In spite of all this nonsense from the left, we are going to win. We're in the process of taking this country back. We are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
I mean, the Second American Revolution. Now, that rhetoric is clearly dangerous. It's pretty deranged. but it also sparked some new attention, not attention they wanted necessarily, on this very unpopular and extreme second-term plan of theirs, which Donald Trump, of all people, seemed to pick up on. He said, quote, "I know nothing about Project 2025. I have no idea who's behind it. I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. Anything they do, I wish them luck, but I have nothing to do with them." I mean, I know nothing about it. I just disagree with it. And also, I wish them luck. None of that makes sense altogether, I'll just say. But Trump is basically trying to pretend he is totally removed from Project 2025, which is awkward for a range of reasons, including this.
Heritage Foundation president, somebody else doing an unbelievable job. He's bringing it back to levels it's never seen. Dr. Kevin Roberts. Kevin, thank you, Kevin.
He's doing an unbelievable job. Kevin Roberts is the same guy you saw in the earlier clip. Now, remember, a huge contingency of MAGA world is also promoting this plan, like, say, Trump ally Steve Bannon, a guy who's apparently in contact with Trump at all hours of the day, including during interviews like this one you see on the screen, and who literally waved the 900-page plan around in an interview that he did last week with ABC before heading off to prison. See, many of Project 2025 contributors and advisors had very formal roles in the Trump administration or campaign. And importantly, these are people who are also expected to be in Trump's White House again if he wins. Some of those names you might recognize. Others you may just be learning about, like, say, Russ Vought, the former director of the Office of Management and Budget, who wrote the plan's chapter on the Executive Office of the President, a pretty important chapter. He's believed to also be a leading contender to be Trump's chief of staff, as in the most powerful advisor in the White House. In the meantime, Vought is overseeing the overhaul of the Republican Party platform. That's right. This same guy was appointed by the RNC in the Trump campaign as the director for 2024 RNC Platform Committee. So yeah, I'm sure Trump knows nothing about these plans. Just some kind of coincidence that someone who might be his chief of staff is orchestrating the development of many of these exact plans. Just a coincidence. So again, people close to Trump wrote Project 2025. People close to him promote Project 2025. And don't forget, this plan is largely consistent, almost all of it, with everything Trump himself talks about openly. What Trump says out loud at rallies about immigration, about dismantling of federal agencies, about the expansion of presidential power, and a litany of other right-wing priorities is in complete lockstep with Project 2025. So the man could read a public sentiment to some degree. We'll give him that. And he may recognize that public sentiment around Project 2025 is becoming quite toxic. It doesn't matter what you call it, or what Trump says about it, what he knows or doesn't know about it, or who he wishes well, because these plans are Donald Trump's plans, and no one should forget that.
Anything they do, I wish them luck, but I have nothing to do with them. Now, from the get-go, we all know that wasn't true, so we set out to debunk it. And honestly, I thought there might be a little more legwork involved in spelling out the web of connections between Donald Trump and Project 2025. But then I realized all you have to do is look at the table of contents of Project 2025. Let's literally go through it. The author of each section is listed right here, and I'm just going to list them. Forward, A Promise to America, written by Kevin Roberts, the president of the Heritage Foundation. Trump has name-checked the Heritage Foundation several times, including just a few months ago when he wrote that Roberts, quote, should keep going and get the word out. Chapter 1 on the White House office was written by Rick Dearborn, Trump's former White House deputy chief of staff. Chapter 2 on the Executive Office of the President of the United States was written by Russell Vought, who is Trump's former director of the Office of Management and Budget. Chapter 3 on managing the bureaucracy was co-written by former advisor to Ronald Reagan, Donald Devine, along with Dennis Dean Kirk, a Trump nominee for the chair of the Merit Systems Protection Board, and Paul Dans, a Trump appointee to the U.S. Office of Personnel Management. Paul Dans is the director of all of Project 2025. Okay, Chapter 4 on the Department of Defense, written by Christopher Miller, who was Donald Trump's acting Secretary of Defense from November 2020 through the end of his term. Want me to keep going? Okay. Chapter 5 on the Department of Homeland Security, written by Ken Cuccinelli, Donald Trump's Secretary of Homeland Security. Chapter 6 on the Department of State, written by Kieran Skinner, the director of policy planning for Donald Trump's State Department. Roger Severino, known to be aggressively anti-abortion rights and anti-LGBTQ plus rights, and who served as Donald Trump's director of the Office of Civil Rights for the Department of Health and Human Services, well, he wrote the chapter on that department. Peter Navarro, who served as Trump's top trade advisor, he's currently in prison for contempt of Congress, authored part of the chapter on trade. The more you look in here, the more you find.
I can't put it any clearer than this. These people are liars. They lie for a living. They cannot help themselves. They have diabetes, and they are incapable of telling the truth. So everything they say is a lie. Even if there's a little nugget of truth in there that Project 2025 exists, it's not some conspiracy to do away with minorities and women and all this other nonsense. It is a plan by a conservative think tank with other conservative think tanks saying this is what we would like out of a Republican presidency. Donald Trump disavowed this already, but they're still pretending that this is what the Trump campaign is all about. Expect to see more of that as they realize they're screwed.